If you are into movies and movie-related discussions, you've come to the right place. Who am I, you ask? I am The Wiz, and with me today is...
Zero.
Zero! How you doing, my man?
Got through a really tough cycle at work, so things are looking a little clear for now, but they may get crazy again real soon. I have no idea. The ultimate factor will be how things go tomorrow, so we will see if things are going to get messier or if it's just going to be a, hey, you get a reprieve for a bit.
Yeah. See, when you're into industrial farming like you are, you have your off days and your on days, and I get that. And it's really bad to be out in the weather in those fields in the 102-degree heat. So I really appreciate all you do for this country, Zero. So we are here to review the 2003 animated film Millennium Actress, directed by Satoshi Kon. I mean, I can go on forever about Satoshi Kon and his films. We talked about it before. So I guess the question I had when I watched this movie, I wanted to ask you specifically, why do the Japanese seem to respect and love animation more than, I would say, Americans? Because Americans seem to have the stigma of if it's animated, it's for kids. But with Japan specifically, they seem to have a much deeper respect for the art form. Why is that?
I don't have a 100% accurate answer.
Okay.
My answer is going to be more based on speculation.
Yeah.
I think really animation took off in Japan when Disney started doing stuff and releasing it worldwide. The Japanese saw it. They were just utterly fascinated that you could create a feature film with no live actors and just having to have a director manage a set or anything. You just, can hire a whole bunch of animators and just basically have them have the story play out the way that you want it to play out, and then the hired talent that you just need to hire are just the voices, and then that's pretty much it. And they've just gone to just like with any Japanese craft, they just get this intense desire to master it to just peak efficiency.
Yeah, because a lot of the stuff that we are watching, let's see, get into not even just Satoshi Kon, but Hayao Miyazaki, or even other directors that do animated films in Japan. They are breathtaking most of the time. Miyazaki is on another level, but there are a lot of them that are actually really good looking. And they're just dramas. They're romances. They're comedies. They're something that you wouldn't expect to have such exquisite animation, or that you would think that if the film was done in America, it would be a live-action film. But they do it in Japan, and they do it really well. And it just surprises me every time I watch an animated film from Japan. Maybe not almost all the time it's beautiful, but they're incredibly fluid. And they seem to be a lot more creative where they place the shots of what they're doing. So a little hint to how I'm feeling about Millennium Actress. It just really shocked me at times when I was watching this and going, I wouldn't see this type of great shot selection in standard films in America. These are really impressive looking. And another thing too is, if I read correctly, they don't take a long time making these movies, do they? They actually are pretty efficient, correct?
Yeah, I think it's the creation and development of most of the animated features is a few years, whereas most big movie productions can take sometimes almost close to a decade in some cases.
Oh yeah, there was one film, I think The Lion King took about 7 or 8 years to get done, if I recall correctly. I might be wrong. And a lot of computer-generated films, nowadays in America, they take 6 or 7 years most times. So if their process is really down, maybe 5 years. But to make these animated films and to have them so beautiful and just so fluid is just awe-inspiring to watch at times. I like to make fun of people who are into anime, but honestly, I'm partially jealous because I like animated films. I really gravitate towards them, but with the exceptions of some maybe Irish films that I like, I have never seen anything more beautiful that comes out in Japan. It is breathtaking to watch, and the diverse amount of things that they can do on those animated movies and the animated shows is also incredible. You would never see a Cowboy Bebop in America. It would have to be made in Japan. Because if you did it in the United States, they would make it live action right away. It just really blows me away. Like again with this one, Millennium Actress. This movie, if they were to make it in the United States, I guarantee you, if they remake it, it's gonna be a live-action remake. It's not gonna be an anime remake in the United States. So let's get into the review of Millennium Actress, directed by Satoshi Kon. We're going to do minor spoilers. We're not going to have a spoiler section, but we're going to do some minor spoilers throughout the review. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are first, so go right ahead.
This one was interesting, especially just how there's just a really, really big mind-bending element to it. And I think it was just sort of neat how you have the present day mixing with the actress's memories of like her past productions and things like that. It was just so interesting. Seeing things just shift in and out, and almost kind of in a fluid way that as the viewer, you almost kind of question what is reality and what is merely just a memory, a figment of Chiyoko's sort of idyllic days when she was an actress and everything.
Yeah, the way that the film is structured is the story is Chiyoko is an actress that was a very popular actress from when she was a child to a certain point in her life. And the film is kind of a blend of a documentary filmmaker interviewing her and a blend of also the movies she's done, like you said, memories that she's had in the past and stuff like that. But they're blended like so distinctly that you can't tell while you're watching what's a memory, what's part of the film, or what is exactly going on. These films can be really interesting, but they can also be really frustrating. You have a hard time sometimes watching a movie that if you're not buying in 100%, you have a hard time parsing what is what. For example, one of my favorite movies of all time is Mulholland Drive, which is a David Lynch film. That film is one of the most confusing as hell movies I've ever watched. I have seen it 7 or 8 times, and I still have no fucking idea what the movie is about. But I love it because it is visually appealing and breathtaking, and it really makes me think about what's going on and what the movie's about, and that's part of the fun. I do like Millennium Actress, but I'm more frustrated by the way that the film is than captivated by it. And the reason why is because I get the feeling as I'm watching this film that the thing that makes it confusing is just obfuscating what the story is. Let me just put it by you, Zero, as to what you think that the story is. I'll give you my interpretation. What I think the film is about is, it is ostensibly a love story, but I think generally the film is about her dealing with this mysterious person that she was never able to connect with again. Just so happens every setting that is switched upon are films that this actress has made, but in no way, shape, or form are you seeing scenes from those movies. They're just interpretations of her dramatizing her plight as to finding this mysterious man that she's in love with. And the whole obfuscation of the different settings, the different stories, and everything is just obfuscation, pure and simple.
I think it is kind of a series of vignettes about her past life. Maybe there's maybe a little bit of a supernatural element to it, but I think that could just be more an embellishment of the story rather than an actual truly supernatural element in the story overall.
The way that the film breaks up into vignettes, I think it was just a clever ruse just to show, like, I think the history of Japanese films from, let's say, before World War II until about the 60s and 70s, I think you would know a lot more about what time periods it is trying to extrapolate on. But I think really, I'll keep stating this, in the end, I think the differences and shifting of setting is just pure obfuscation. It is just a way to make the film much more visually distinctive, whereas the real story is about this young girl who is now an old woman trying to recount the one love of her life, who is basically a mysterious man that she never got to know. We can disagree with that, of course, but I guess the one thing that, like, the vignettes that make it different is that each is set in, like, a different style of film that might have been popular at those days. Would that make sense?
I don't think it's really just about what in particular is popular.
Okay.
I think it's just kind of like of the actress and her work and everything, because like she's in period pieces, which for anyone not familiar with the term, in Asian TV and movies, a period piece is basically something that's set during the feudal days. So I think kind of like how in Western TV and films you have stuff like Game of Thrones and things like that. The equivalent of something like that in Asian cultures typically just called a period piece. So you have like some films and things that she stars in where it's just set in like just the feudal warring states period and stuff like that. So you've got samurais and armor and all, and ladies in like just elaborate kimono style gowns and things like that. And then it even goes into kind of like the sci-fi territory with a kaiju movie. And for anyone not familiar with that term, think of the Godzilla movies. We're talking like the classic Toho Godzilla, not the newer movies, but just classic old-fashioned Godzilla. So it's just kind of a wide range of movies that she's in, but interestingly enough, just it starts off with her being roped into just trying to make a patriotic film, and then just from there her career sort of takes off, and then you just start diving into all the different genres that she's worked in.
You think that the differences of the settings have nothing to do with the overall history of Japanese cinema. It's just, I guess, a dressing of the movies that she could have been in.
More like a chronology of her work, but just with maybe some details embellished here and there.
Because she ages a little bit as each type of movie goes. Like, she's a little bit older in from the first movie to when she is a lady of a lord to and moving forward from there. I want to say that the main story, which is the love story between Chiyoko and this mysterious man, I think is actually very good. Definitely enjoyed that aspect of the film, and then when the end happened, I got a little misty-eyed. I thought that was really well done. It's this trapping surrounding it that I kind of was a little miffed by. I was kind of like, it's not as good. I think my main issue with the film is the documentarian or the director. And my issue is not that he's a bad character or that he's annoying. My issue is I don't know exactly why he's important, other than to be the interviewer. Because as the movie goes on, he get into the story as the film goes. And even after thinking about it, I'm not entirely sure why that is. Why is this character, who is trying to find out more about the actress, the Chiyoko, is suddenly interfering in these vignettes? Now, there is one at the end of one vignette where they're literally play acting a scene, but then that kind of blends outward as the film goes, and he keeps doing it, and I just don't understand exactly why that is.
It's somewhat revealed towards the midpoint of the movie. He did end up being, I guess, like a low-level film apprentice of some sort, and basically he was actually working on a lot of the movies and things that she was starring in, and he had became a fan of her during that time, and it just sort of was one of those things that sort of pulled him in. At least that was the feeling I got from it.
But then my question then is this: are they kind of interpreting him as a super fan or a stalker to a certain extent? Because then
I would say it's much more sweet, so it's just something like a very enthusiastic fan.
Because again, like, he literally interferes in the vignettes, and this is before he's introduced as a young man in the film production. He's literally interfering in some of the stories. Even if it's just like him geeking out about these stories, it still doesn't really explain as to why he's able to interfere in them. And I know someone's probably going to be able to interpret it their own way, and that's fine, but I don't understand specifically what the purpose of that was, other than to be a sort of comic relief. Like, I like the video camera guy who's... that's another thing, too, now I just thought about it. These guys are more than well aware that they are in this strange world that Chiyoko has pretty much created out of her mind, and that they are in that world. At first, I thought that's kind of funny. It's kind of fourth wall breaking. It's kind of funny in that way. But then as the film goes, it's just like, I don't understand exactly what you're doing here. And if it's other than it's funny, then I find that kind of disappointing. The film, the way it was broken up, seems to want to tell not just the story of Chiyoko and this love that she had, but I thought there was going to be a more underlying story in there, and I don't think it's there. Uh-oh.
As said, I mean, I mostly saw it in the lens of just, this is just sort of almost kind of like a documentary meets a memoir sort of a thing going on. And just the vignettes kind of showed just maybe her embellishments on both things that she experienced during the productions, but also maybe some embellishments on what was going on in her life at the time and everything.
So you think she's embellishing to a certain extent? Like, in what ways?
Just like some of the fantastical stuff, how in some cases there's kind of like a mysterious element. I don't want to give too much away and everything, but just there are occasional moments where there's like a superstitious element that sort of creeps into her life and almost sort of becomes like a disruption to a degree. And it starts to blur the line between reality and just an embellishment in some ways, because in some aspects, just it gets to a point where it feels like it starts to affect her real life, and then there are moments where it just seems just completely fantastical. Mm-hmm. But then you also have moments in her life where she ends up going through some sorrow in her life, but she concedes to a few times that, you know, I'm not sure that this is what exactly happened, but this is what some people say they feel happened. And in those cases, I almost kind of feel like that she's sort of just further embellishing the tale.
So you think this is an unreliable narrator movie?
Maybe to a light degree, not to like a severe degree.
Okay. Let me drill down to exactly what you think this is, because I guess I'm a little confused. It's kind of an unreliable narrator, but you also think that the narrator, who's Chiyoko, is kind of losing her faculties a little bit?
A bit, yeah.
Okay. I can see that. Yeah, I can definitely see that part of it. Here's my thing. I don't think the story is all that deep. And like I said in the beginning, I really think that as the film was going forward, I just think that the change in settings were just that, a change in setting. Even if you have the fantastical elements and all the different things that happen in the movies or in the vignettes, I really think all they were interpretations of her inner mind. I think the fantastical element you're thinking of, but I think that more is an interpretation of what's in her head. But I think that's what that fantastical element is. I think that literally is just is just her extrapolating exactly what she's thinking. And because of the way that vignette is shot, and it reminds me of, like, I would say early Kurosawa films like Rashomon, I think that's what that vignette is trying to embody. I get what you're coming from here. Like, I'm not saying that I think you're 100% wrong in that, because I can definitely see where you're coming from here, where you think that it's that kind of a blend of unreliable narrator, and that she's losing her faculties, and her memories of her movies and her life is blurring to a certain extent. But part of me that just, I want to think about that and go, yeah, I see what you're getting at, and that makes it more interesting, but I just don't buy that. And I think that's because film is a little too short. It's about 90 minutes, and for the story that it was telling, which is the love story, I think in that aspect, the 90 minutes were perfect. But for the more abstract elements, I think it was too thin. When you have more abstract elements, you want to be able to question more of what's going on and as to why. And I really never felt at any point I wanted to question what was going on. Just that I would say about halfway through the film, I was like, oh, I think this is what this is. And nothing in the film from that point forward made me question that. And that's the fun of these types of movies, where you think you know what's going on, and then something throws a curveball and go, oh, wait a minute. And I don't think I got that. Maybe call me out on it if you want. Maybe I am wishing this was a lot more of a complicated film than what it was. But then, even with what it had, I don't think there was enough depth to dive into it thematically than for it to be just the love story that it was.
I think this is more something that I had bumped into during my supplemental research and things like that.
Okay.
It was kind of fascinating when I was doing some supplemental research because apparently the movie is based on two very famous actresses from Japanese cinema, and it's Setsuko Hara and Hideko Takamine. Chiyoko is sort of a blend of these two actresses, and it's just kind of interesting because, again, sort of the whole blending of what's real, what's maybe a construed figment of the imagination, or maybe what's potentially just grounded in reality but has a little bit of embellishment to it. The character of Chiyoko just doesn't seem to fit the mold of either Setsuko Hara or Hideko Takamine. And then, of course, with Chiyoko being fairly old too, I think that all has to do with things as well too, because of course just the setup of the movie is that after a long storied career in acting, she just ended up retiring and just becoming a complete recluse. And some people who end up becoming recluse end up having their memories jumbled up from just mental illness and stuff like that too.
Hold on a second. Hold on. So now,
at least that's my interpretation.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
I'm not saying that's what I 100% think it is, but it just feels like just while she's remembering the glory days, just some of the details are being jumbled up because she is quite old and she is a fragile health as well too.
So like a dementia, or do you think that she has like a personality disorder? Would that end? Like a
maybe more of a psychosis.
Really interesting. That's an interesting interpretation. I don't know if I see that, though. Well, okay. In some aspects, sure. When you going back to the fantastical elements that we're not spoiling, but we're talking about way too much, I think if you take those into interpretation, then sure. Then yes, I think you've got a point there. I don't know. Like, it's these elements that I would love to talk more about, that I think they're the most undercooked. And I think that would have been really fascinating if they spent more time on that movie. Like, this is one of the few movies where I actually said, I want more of this movie, because I think this should have been 2 hours, so they could build up that stuff. But even saying that, I think the movie is good, and I think the romance angle is pretty good. And like I said, I emotionally was hit by it at the end of the film. But if the movie was just that, then I think I would have had a more positive experience with it. I think I would be rating it higher than I am going to today. But because the film had this really abstract way of going through it, it made me question a lot of the decisions that was made. What did you think of the abstractness of the film? I mean, did it enhance the viewing experience for you, or was it kind of a non-starter? What were your thoughts?
I personally thought it was fairly interesting.
Okay.
It wasn't extremely deep or anything, but I thought it was fairly interesting.
What made it interesting for you? Like, what were the things that really caught you as you were watching it? That did any of it frustrate you at a certain point?
I don't think it really frustrated me as far as the abstractness goes. I think really the main concept that gets conveyed a lot through the movie was just, I guess you could say, the concept of a lost connection. She constantly gets close enough just to almost get to the one objective she seeks out so hard for, only for it to be just completely just out of her grasp. You've got things like war disrupting it, things like just randomly bumping into a person in the middle of a busy street sort of later on, and it just seems like this abstract theme of just a constantly missed connection that just she wants so badly just to make this connection and just finally be able to meet with this gentleman with the key, and just everything just gets in the way. Everything just bars her path, and just even though she can taste how close she is several times, just it's always something that eludes her grasp.
I think it's called Strangers in the Night kind of type of love story, or
yeah,
I think it's what it's called. But like I said, like that story is interesting. I like that story, and I liked how it ended. I mean, like I said, like the trappings around it is where I become a little soured by it. It's good that you were able to enjoy it with that, or enjoy the abstractness and the way that it was. I came out of it just liking what I watched, but it's one of those movies as I started thinking about it more and more, the more and more I started picking it apart and having problems. And this happens sometimes. Any kind of aspects of the film that you want to get into, that you want to talk about?
I just kind of like, I guess you could call it the cinematography of the movie, just
Yes.
how they blend from reality to what's a memory, or what's maybe just a fantastical misremembering of something. How it shifts from perspective to perspective is just so visually striking.
Yes, I don't think of Kon's films, it's his most beautiful looking film, but the way that he blocks and places the quote unquote camera, I have no other way of putting it, but the way he blocks the scenes, and the way that, and how fluid the animation is, from, like you said, going from one scene to another, is flawless in this movie. And in that aspect, I really like how this film is animated. But when it comes to like the animation quality, I think Paprika is a lot better in the way that the film looks and how the animation is. But also, Paprika is an entirely different film than this. So that's not a surprise with that, at least. But I agree with you. The way that it looks and the way that it is presented is really well done. And it's something that I thought about after I watched the movie. It is why I tend to gravitate towards these animated films. Because there is the thing of having limitations when you're a filmmaker. When you are dealing with live action people and you have to use sets or you have to use green screen, there are limitations to what you can do to make it believable. But in animation, you can do whatever the fuck you want. And that becomes a problem with some creative people, because then if they have a canvas and they can do anything, it's almost paralyzation of choice. It really takes somebody very gifted in making stories to not only have the discipline to stay within a theme, but to keep that consistent throughout animating the entire film. And Kon is a master of this, which makes me really sad that he's no longer here. He is so good at this. Even like films that I'm about with his, like I like all of his films, but Perfect Blue, as much as I do like it, I had problems with it. But even then, like it takes a really disciplined master of something, of storytelling, to do it the way he does it in this. Whereas I would say in like American animated films, they seem to go all over the place a lot of the times, and that is for like slapstick and for certain types of things that they're doing. It takes a certain amount of discipline to do this, and I think that's the thing that I love about Kon, is that he is disciplined even though he animates beautifully in these movies.
It kind of goes back to one of my favorite things that I've mentioned in a previous review too, but sometimes less is more.
Yes.
With Millennium Actress, while it is restrained, it also is better due to having restraint, because like in the beginning, just with the whole blending of reality, I was just like, oh man, this is probably just going to go all over the map with this. This just looks completely fantastical. Mm-hmm. And yet, just to my surprise, it didn't completely go off the rails, because I've seen it with other animated features too, where just they'll kind of, just start with this thing and just go, oh wait, but we can do so much more. It's animation. We can go completely fucking bonkers with it. And then it just ends up being a muddled mess, because you're just like, what in the world has this become? This started off in this particular genre, in this particular set of themes and rules, and now the movie has gone 8 different directions and now has like 4 themes I have to keep track of. And it's just one of those things that, like you mentioned, Western animation houses can get so lost in the weeds with that kind of stuff and just have absolutely no restraint. And yet, with Millennium Actress, Satoshi Kon just has a good amount of restraint with this whole thing. And it's also something that I found a bit interesting when doing some supplemental research as well, too, because apparently when the project for Millennium Actress started, Taro Maki had basically just set the theme of, hey, let's make a movie that's like a trompe-l'oeil, and mostly because he was just absolutely captivated by just Satoshi Kon's work. And then while doing the script writing, Kon ended up just sort of narrowing down the concept of it and basically boiled it down to an old woman who was once touted as a great actress is supposed to be recounting her life story, but her memories get confused and the various roles she played in the past begin to blend in to the story, creating a tumultuous story overall. It's just kind of interesting to see that he was able to take a concept idea and just refine it down in a way that just sets very, very clear boundaries on where the film will go. Because if it was just kind of the original concept that Taro Maki had came up with, this film could have been completely off the rails.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Back to Western animation real quick. I think what led to animation being the way it is now is Disney's Aladdin, because they saw how successful Robin Williams was as the genie and him going all over the place and seeing how creative that was to do, and they just kind of went further and further down that road. Whereas, like you said, the restraint in a lot of these Japanese films and these anime films, including from Miyazaki. Like, Miyazaki is an incredibly creative director, but he stays within certain themes in all of his movies and keeps it there most times. He doesn't really delve past those things unless it really benefits the plot. Okay, so final thoughts. I want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Please go first.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're getting pushy. I like that. Okay, so my final thoughts on Millennium Actress. So the main story that the film is about, I actually liked. I didn't know this was supposed to be a love story, and I was quite surprised by it, because I do like love stories. I do like romances. So I actually really enjoyed that. But the trappings around it, the story, the shifting of settings, and the documentary filmmaker being involved, and all that stuff really hampered down the quality for me in this movie. Even though I still do like this movie, and I'm going to give it a fair rating, I still am a little disappointed by it. But I will also say, while being disappointed on this movie, I will watch this again. I do find it kind of captivating in its own way, even though I do find it fairly flawed. Okay, so I'm going to change my rating right off the fly now. I was going to give it a 3. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. Mainly is because I do think the love story is just really well done in this movie. I just want to understand what the shifting of settings means and why it's that way and why certain things happen in the movie. And all I can think of right now is it's just window dressing. And if that is what it is, I think I'm going to be more and more disappointed as time goes. I'm going to give this 3.5 stars for now. I do think it's a very good movie. I just thought it was going to be much more than what it was. The elements that would have elevated it, I think, fell flat. So 3.5 stars for me on Millennium Actress.
I'll probably come off as a bit optimistic. I'm gonna go with an 80%.
Okay.
So about 4 stars.
Nice.
But I just kind of like the reality bending storytelling, where just you shift from present to a memory to back to present, and I just felt that it's just such a fun way to depict a story, instead of just to kind of go from like a hard shot of one period and then a hard shot back to the present and everything, like you would see with a live action movie.
We kind of have similar ratings. We don't feel the exact same way about it, which is interesting, but we kind of have a similar rating. I mean, I definitely enjoy the film. I think it is a very good film. But when it comes to the films of Satoshi Kon, it's like my third favorite. I think Paprika is still my favorite, followed by Perfect Blue, and then this. And Perfect Blue I liked very much, but I still had a couple of nagging issues. Paprika is excellent. I actually really like Paprika a lot. I guess the only thing I can say to you is if you can find those other Kon films, I would say give them a shot. Especially Paprika. I think you would really enjoy Paprika. Again, Zero gives it 80%. I give it 3.5 stars out of 5. Good movie. We both like it for different reasons, but I think that's really the mark of a quality film, that we can all see it in a different way, and we can still find something we like about it. So I would say give this movie a shot. It's on Crunchyroll, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you have a Crunchyroll subscription, check that out. All right, Zero, so we are at the end of this review, which means we're going to go on to what we're going to watch next week. Zero, what are we watching next week?
John Woo's Hard Boiled with Chow Yun Fat.
Yeah, boy. I have been wanting to watch this for a long time. I told you at the beginning of this, what got me interested in this was the game Stranglehold, which is a sequel to this movie, which I still find kind of funny that I never heard this movie before that. And when I played the game and really liked it, and then when I realized, oh my god, it's based off of a movie, I gotta check it out. It was on the Criterion Collection, but it was out of print. So I couldn't get it unless I paid like a $200 pay to actually get it on eBay, which there's no fucking way I'm doing that. So I am excited for this. I know you're a fan of Chow Yun Fat, right?
Yeah, he's a stand-up dude. Especially when the Hong Kong protests were happening, he was a big supporter of the Hong Kong independence movement, and he was such a Chad too, because the Communist Party basically threatened him, going, "Hey, if you keep doing this, we will pretty much blackball you from acting in Chinese cinema." And he was just like, "I don't care. You can do whatever the fuck you want." I was just like, holy shit, what a fucking Chad right here.
Yeah, I love that. Oh man, I love that. Oh, that's awesome. I have seen a few of Chow Yun Fat's films, well, mostly the American ones, except for Crouching Tiger, which technically is American, but not really. So I like Chow Yun Fat. Did you see The Replacement Killers?
Yes, I did.
What'd you think of it?
I thought that was all right.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. So yeah, so my experience is limited, but from whatever I've heard about how good Chow Yun Fat is, this is the movie that you have to see. So I'm excited. So tune in next week where me and Zero are going to review Hard Boiled, starring Chow Yun Fat, directed by John Woo. I am The Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
And we'll talk to you next week. Bye.